She arrived just before dawn, pushing a rusted cart, wrapped in a faded scarf and an oversized coat that smelled faintly of detergent and dust. Her back was bent, her steps slow, her eyes lowered. The guards barely glanced at her as they opened the side gate. She came every Tuesday, after all. What they didn't know was that beneath the scarf, the woman was not a woman at all. She was Edward Harrington, billionaire, founder, patriarch, and today he was testing his daughter-in-law. Edward had built an empire from nothing, but success had taught him one brutal truth. People revealed their real character only when they believed no one important was watching. His son's recent marriage had unsettled him, not because he doubted love, but because he doubted appearances. Victoria Harrington looked perfect on paper, elegant, educated, charitable, at least in public. But something about her politeness felt rehearsed, her kindness conditional. Edward needed to know who she truly was, so he became invisible. He shuffled across the courtyard, collecting bags left by the servants' quarters. The morning air was sharp, and his hands, unused to this kind of work, ached almost immediately. Still, he welcomed the discomfort. It reminded him where he came from. As he approached the main house, the front doors opened. Victoria stepped out, phone pressed to her ear, heels clicking against marble. She didn't look down as she spoke, until she nearly collided with Edward's cart. "Watch where you're going," she snapped, irritation flashing across her face. Edward lowered his head apologetically. "Sorry, madam," she sighed, covering the phone. "These people are always in the way," she muttered, loud enough to be heard. Edward felt the words land heavier than the cart. Victoria glanced at the overflowing bag on top. "You missed yesterday's trash near the west wing," she said sharply. "Do your job properly." "Yes, madam," Edward replied softly. She turned away without another word, already back on her call, her tone instantly sweet again. Edward continued working unseen and unheard, but inside something tightened. This was only the first hour, and already the test had begun. What Edward didn't yet know was that by the end of the day the mask would fall, not just from his face but from hers as well. And the truth it revealed would change the Harrington family forever. Edward spent the rest of the morning moving through the estate like a shadow. From the rose garden to the service corridors he watched. He listened. He noticed the things wealth usually muffled, the sighs of tired staff, the way eyes dropped when voices hardened, the unspoken tension that lingered behind polished smiles. Victoria moved through it all like a queen inspecting a chessboard. When she addressed guests, her voice was warm, generous. When she spoke to staff, it sharpened, never cruel enough to draw attention, but never kind enough to offer dignity. At breakfast, Edward stood near the kitchen door, pretending to sort recyclables. A young maid accidentally spilled juice on the counter. Victoria's gaze snapped toward her. "Honestly," she said coldly, "is basic competence too much to ask?" The maid's face flushed. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Edward's fingers curled around the edge of the bin. Later, Edward deliberately slowed his work near the patio where Victoria entertained a friend. The friend laughed. "You're lucky," she said, "marrying into this family?" Victoria smiled, smooth and practiced. "Luck has nothing to do with it, standards do." Edward watched her hand gesture dismissively toward the staff. "Some people are just meant to serve." The words cut deeper than he expected. He remembered his own mother, scrubbing floors, hands cracked, pride intact. He remembered the promise he'd made to himself when he first found success. "No one in my world will be made to feel small." By noon, Edward's shoulders ached. Sweat clung to his back beneath the coat. He sat briefly on a low wall near the service entrance, breathing heavily. Victoria passed again, this time without her phone. She stopped. "Why are you sitting?" she asked. "You're being paid to work, not rest." Edward looked up slowly. "My back's not so good, madam." She frowned. "Then maybe you shouldn't be doing this job." She walked away. No cruelty, no shouting. Just indifference. Edward closed his eyes. The test was no longer about curiosity. It was about confirmation. And what he was confirming broke his heart. Not because of anger, but because of what it meant for his son. Still, he said nothing. Because the final part of the test hadn't happened yet. And when it did, Victoria would face a choice. One that would reveal everything words never could. The moment came just after sunset. Edward had positioned himself near the side gate, loading the last bags onto the cart when he heard a sharp voice behind him. "You wait." He turned slowly. Victoria stood there, arms crossed, irritation etched across her face. "The guests are still here. I don't want trash carts visible near the driveway. Take the long route." Edward nodded. "It'll take longer, madam." She shrugged. "That's not my problem." Before Edward could respond, another voice cut through the air. "Victoria?" Both of them turned. It was Daniel, Edward's son, stepping out of the house, concern in his eyes. "Why are you speaking to the staff like that?" Victoria's expression shifted instantly. Her posture softened, her smile returned. "Oh, I was just giving instructions. You know how things fall apart if you don't stay on top of them." Daniel glanced at Edward. "Is everything okay?" Edward met his son's eyes for the first time that day. Then he straightened. Slowly, deliberately, he removed the scarf. The bent posture disappeared. The tired shuffle was gone. He stood tall. Victoria's smile froze. "Dad?" Daniel whispered. Edward met Victoria's gaze, steady, calm, devastating. "Yes," Edward said, "it's me." The color drained from Victoria's face. This is a joke." Edward shook his head. "No, it was a test." Silence fell like a weight. "I wanted to see who you were when you thought no one important was watching," Edward continued. "How you treated people you believed were beneath you." Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Words failed her. Edward gestured to the cart. "This job is honest, necessary, and deserving of respect. The way you spoke today." He paused. "That's not the kind of person I want representing this family." Daniel looked between them, pain and clarity dawning together. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Is that how you really see people?" Victoria's voice trembled. I was stressed. I didn't mean—" Edward raised a hand. "Character shows in stress." He turned to his son. "The Harrington name isn't built on money. It's built on how we treat those who can give us nothing." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, not from shame but from fear. Edward took one final look at her. "You may stay in this family," he said evenly, "only if you learn humility. Otherwise, wealth will not save you." He turned back to the cart, pushing it toward the gate, no longer disguised, yet still the same man he'd been that morning. Daniel followed, silent. Behind them, Victoria stood alone in the courtyard, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt very small. Because the test was over, and the truth had spoken louder than any disguise ever could.